France.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, welcome everyone. Happy to be sharing our thoughts. And also hearing yours, more importantly, to be honest.
Yeah, we're growing. It's 18 now.
We'll maybe just get started.
Yeah, now it's 7.
Give it maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, let's make 2 minutes.
All right.
We're not all Germans.
Yeah, I think my clock is not right. I have 2 minutes past 7 already. So. All right.
Nice to see all the international names.
Yeah, true. Very international audience.
Cool. It's one of the few advantages of these times.
Yeah, true.
All right, do we want to start?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. So welcome everybody to our first, it's actually the first online discussion we're doing with the Mind Foundation. And we want to talk about the leading question together with you. Can psychedelics change your political views? And before we want to do this, let's make a quick introduction round. And I think it may be the best if we would just make this via the poll. So we had a nice introduction, or yeah, maybe introduction question, which is also the title question. If you had to answer the title question, can psychedelics change your political view? Would you answer with a yes or no? That's the question, and you should see it by now. Can you just give us a short, yeah, okay, you see it.
Should I answer?
Choose, right? Just wanted to vote, but I can't.
Yeah, no, only attendees can vote. Yeah, that's true.
No, that's all right.
Oh, that's a very clear.
Where can we see the results? I can't see them.
So right now it's 17 times for yes, and 18. It's complicated, yeah. I know that Cole was going to say this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so almost everybody voted, and we have 20 for yes and 3 for no, 21 even. Yeah.
Right. Let's see if some minds will be changed, perhaps.
Yeah, let's see if some minds will be changed. You should see it now, right? Now you should also see it. Yeah, so that's our results.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, maybe that's a good question in the chat. Right now, we do not record. Does anybody have a problem when we record this? Of course, it's your right to say so, then we won't do it. if we record it, we will just use the MP3 format, so we won't use the video format. But if you do not want to have it published, then please say so. Yeah, otherwise I think it would be a nice idea to record it. Okay, that's a no. Then I record it, and of course, if you change your mind, you can give us a message, and we will delete it, of course. Yeah.
I think this.
All right. Okay. So what we came up with as a start for this discussion, it's probably nice before we start and jump into the discussion to have some sort of two opposing positions that will help us to have the topic more clear about what we are discussing. And in order to do so, both Lukas and Andy will have two different positions that they want to argue for. So Andy will argue for the position that psychedelics make you more open, and there's actually a correlation between psychedelic use and liberal views. And as was indicated in the article, we also used as kind of the starting point for this discussion. Lukas then will argue against that, saying that psychedelics do not necessarily change your political view. But this is just a few sentences for me. And now, please, Andy, you're free to start and convince us by your position. Yeah.
Well, according to the poll results, I've got the easier job. So yeah, everyone, thank you for coming and thank you for being here. I see some people still dropping in. I will be giving some arguments in favor of the fact that psychedelics can change your political views. When diving into the literature, I saw that one of the most cited studies was the one done by McLean and Griffiths in 2011, where they gave 53 people a rather high dose of psilocybin, which is, as you probably know, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. They found that 30 out of the 52 people actually had increases in the personality trait of openness. You might be familiar with the Big Five, which I'm not actually sure if I know all of them, but extroversion, neuroticism, openness to experience, and conscientiousness, of which openness has actually been found to have a slightly weak but significant correlation with political preference. It's negatively correlated with conservatism. Moving on from there, psychedelics have been demonstrated also more recently by Carhart Harris, by the group in the Imperial College in London, that psychedelics, even within one session, measuring openness and their personality, pre-session and post-session, that quite sustained changes, increases in openness were observed. If you combine these two facts, for me, I would say it is quite clear that if openness is an influencing factor on your political perspective and psychedelics make you more open, it follows from there. Something that I would like to add to this is that the field of political neuroscience is now starting to grow, and quite interesting studies are being done where people are put under a scanner and are doing a risk perception task. And it is actually being found that liberals, as opposed to conservatives, have differential patterns of activation within their brains while doing a task, where the conservatives have a activation pattern that slightly favors the amygdala, which is the emotional, but also could be argued, I want to be careful with what I'm saying here because I don't want to put a value judgment on it, but a slightly fear risk perception for conservatives, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which is a more prospective processing in the liberals. And interestingly enough, let me see, I need to check who it was. There was another study done where they found larger amygdalas in conservatives and slightly increased thickness of the anterior cingulate cortex in liberals, which very well overlaps with where you see differential patterns by activation within those political orientations. So I think for me, that is a clear case. I'm very curious what Lukas will come up with.
All right, thank you, Andy, for this nice point, for this nice presentation. So yeah, like Patrick said, basically going to be talking about view and what we just read the points made in the article. It was linked in the event description because this article basically is the whole idea and starts. So I'm just going to go what the author says in this article. So for anybody it's called See in the Sky with Nazis, Psychedelics and the Right Wing, and it's online in Symposia. I'm going to post the link again in the chat, so if you want to check it out. So basically what the author is doing, he starts that says, okay, psychedelics say can bring about social change, right? That's what we saw as well in our poll here, that most people think, right, the use of the substance brings about political change, political views, and change, like social change. And basically his main argument against that is that it doesn't happen because there's examples of right-wing and spaces using psychedelics. Okay, somebody said the connection is really bad. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah?
I can hear you, yeah.
If I can...
It is a bit choppy for me as well.
Okay. What I can do, I can turn the camera off maybe, that might increase the connection. Yeah? Let's try it out. Okay, is that better now? Can you guys understand me better?
It's good for now, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll just continue. So yeah, basically it's 4 points that he makes that kind of to support his position that psychedelic use doesn't really bring about social change. The first point he makes, it's that it's not really clear what is changing. So what exactly does it mean to change your political view? Does it mean that people change their view on all political opinions? Or is it just that people become more anti-authority or have experience of being more liberal or becoming more ecological? So it seems to be not really clear. As Andy already mentioned right now, it seems to be very clear what's happening, that it's this increase in opus. So that's kind of the counterpoint there. Then he goes on to make a second point, which is based of just examples of people using psychedelics, but also being active in neo-Nazi and right-wing communities, right? And so there's a string of examples of American neo-Nazi groups using DMT, using mushrooms, selling these substances, and like popular right-wing internet activists admitting they have used psychedelics. So he mentioned that these examples basically show the use of the psychedelic doesn't make you more liberal or more open. And then the third point he makes is that psychedelic culture is still and was most of the time basically a fringe culture. So it's situated on the corners of society where people connect that are not following mainstream society, kind of. And being a fringe culture makes culture more open to having people enter that also have fringe views. So he argues that people with fringe right-wing views could easily enter fringe psychedelic communities just because they are more open to other opinions and other people. This last point is basically that you can't really advocate for political change through psychedelic use without advocating bigger systemic change. So he's basically arguing it doesn't matter really what happens to you when you take a psychedelic or when you're under the influence of psychedelics. These experiences are not that important. It's more important what you do when you're not taking the drug, and that is what is going to bring about social change. Just going to finish it off with a quote from the article that I found really fitting and really agreeable for me. He writes, "If those that have benefited from the real creative, consciousness expanding properties of psychedelics want to see the world improve in some directional way, they should build power with broader drug reform and climate movements during the 99.99% of the time that they are not on drugs." And basically, I'm going to leave it with that. And it's kind of the counter argument. Going to stop my video again so I can. Thanks, guys.
Cool. So that's the two positions. And what we're doing now is we will guide you through the whole discussion. And we will do this to give it a little bit of structure. We'll do this the following way. You can raise your hand, and then we can enable you to speak if you want to say something. So if you ask questions, just raise your hand if you want to say something, and either Andy or I, probably me, will give you the permission to speak, so to speak, yeah. And what do you think? Maybe it's quite interesting to know what you think of these two positions right now. What do you think? Okay, yeah, there we have one. Mohtashim, yeah, you should be able to speak now.
Hello, do you hear me?
Hi, yeah, perfectly.
Okay, I had a question to both panelists. First to Lukas. You mentioned that even the far-right neo-Nazis are using psychedelics. Okay, this is true. But in general public, if you see in general normal people, who is more likely to use drugs, or who is more likely to go into such experiences? For example, I have also another analogy with this. Far right are also against sometimes big corporations, right? And the leftists are, of course they are. So this is the common thing among them. But if you see, generally, it does not make them the far right to open people or to leftists just because they are against the big corporations, all right? They want to have more nationalistic, more identitarian influence in the politics. But however, these things make them, combine them with the leftist. So this is my question is that isn't it any extreme case, just the outliers they are here in this case, because the general publics tend to be too open toward the drugs. And a question to Andy, you said there was a study in which there were 50 participants, and out of the 50, the 31 showed the inclination toward openness, right? Don't you think the people who are likely to take the drugs are already open people? This is not the drugs which will make them open, but they were open. That's why they were trying this. Yeah, thank you very much.
So maybe we start with Lukas, yeah?
Yeah. So I think already your second question kind of relates to the first question as well, actually. So thank you for these really good questions. So you're right, I would say, that people on basically in the general population, people who use drugs might be more open in general. And these are like very extreme examples. And you mentioned this example of being against corporations, right? And I think that kind of actually supports the points the article makes, because it's saying that these substances, the psychedelics, they don't change the political opinion. Just because, like, some people use them, and people all over the world with all kinds of different political views use them. So there's lots of different people that use it, right? And some people are neo-Nazis, very extremist in their views. They might be extremely left or extremely right wing. And basically it doesn't matter that they take these substances, is because the political opinion doesn't change, right? It's just that people on both fringes take these substances, but because they take these substances, they don't change their political view. That's basically the point. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Andy, do you want to continue?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your questions. And you're absolutely correct. Honesty compels me to answer against the point that I'm standing for, because indeed the people that participate in studies where you're going to take psychedelics probably has a bias toward people who like to take psychedelics. So the question is whether it is representative for the general population, and would a person that is very right-wing or against these types of researches or institutionalized studies, would they participate in it? I also have my doubts. So it's a very valid point you raise. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have another one raising his hands. Core. You should be able to speak now.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, the question, can psychedelics change your political view? I answered with yes, because I think it can, only it also depends on your surroundings. Like, it's if you take psychedelics and the people around you are all Nazis, then the possibility that, or wait, I'll start over. I think psychedelics creates the possibility to change the way you look at things, or what your political view is, or how you relate to the world. However, if you take psychedelics and you create this possibility, only you don't have new inputs because you're in this Nazi subculture. There is no no new input to fill up this space that you created. So it's more about psychedelics has the power to create a possibility for change, but it doesn't necessarily needs to produce this change itself.
Okay, Andy, you want to answer?
Well, I'm working on this now, and if we can agree upon the fact that they would increase openness, but as Core argues, if that is just openness to whatever ideas you are in that moment situated in, perhaps you would be more open to right-wing ideology.
Yeah, like openness can also mean that you're more open to the people around you. Maybe it does create more openness, but does that mean that you are open for all ideas if you just have this? Well, if all ideas you receive are right-wing ideas, how can you generate these thoughts of, oh, maybe these are not right? I think you need inspiration of, okay, maybe these these ideas that I hear around me maybe aren't the only ideas that are around.
Maybe this connects to the question that was in the chat about how they measure openness. So does it mean you're more open to opinions in your environment? And that would maybe be an argument for, of course, can then people in right-wing communities become more right-wing? Or how do they measure it? Maybe you can say 1 or 2 sentences about this, Andy.
Yeah. So most of the, actually exclusively, all the personality research is done by questionnaires, and usually on a 5 or 7 point scale, where you identify with statements such as, I like to do things that I've never done before. These kind of things, indicating your openness to experience.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe we jump to the next question. Wolfgang, you also raised your hand, and you should be able to speak right now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Wolfgang, and I don't even know if this really is a question, you know, but listening to all the arguments, you know, one thing popped up in my mind, you know, that I think, yeah, it's very dangerous to mix drugs, you know, using drugs and psychedelics, you know, because even the way we can use psychedelics can be very addictive, you know. But when you take psychedelics in the whole therapeutic context, you know, then there's a very clear effect, and it's the fact that many people become more develop more empathy, and you might I don't want to call it a mystical experience, but you feel more connected and one with everything. So if you're a right-wing Nazi, feeling connected to everything and everybody is against your core opinion, you know. But also if you are left-wing and hate Nazis, you know, you might not feel comfortable all of a sudden hating Nazis, you know. So, you know, it's not so much about right-wing, left-wing political party. It's more about, you know, psychedelics can change your whole way of being in life, you know. It depends where you grew up, you know. If you are like a right-wing Nazi, you might leave the movement. But also if you are like an anti-fascist, you know, punk in Berlin, you also might change your way of living, you know. So you become more human, you know. And just as a reminder, this was one of the reasons why the American government was really, really strongly against the use of psychedelics in the late 60s, because they had the problem that they had a draft army and LSD users, you know, all of a sudden didn't want to fight anymore. Not because they were lazy, but the understanding of the enemy changed, you know. And we have very clear numbers about it, you know, that people just said, like, listen, we don't want to do this anymore, you know. So that's what I mean, you know. It's not so much about right, left, you know, but not, okay, I stop here. I could go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Wolfgang. And this is a very good comment. We, of course, also thought about that maybe the psychedelic experience changes something. Not necessarily makes you more left-wing or right-wing, but maybe it just changes something of your perception, emotionally, cognitively. Maybe you are more connected to nature, right? You also said it. And Lukas, before you maybe make a comment, there was Camille Bahi also wanted to say something. Maybe you can answer to this, Camille, or raise another question, and then we would answer it one after another. Yeah, you should be able to speak right now.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Cool. I think my question is somehow related to what we just said, as I was thinking that to really answer this question, maybe we need to question if is there a relatable is there a link between political ideas and what psychedelics do on the psychological and neurobiological point of view? Like, we know that psychedelics can enhance psychological flexibility. So is it somehow relatable to some politic opinion to be more flexible mentally? Also, connectedness to nature. Maybe we will make different choices when feeling more connected to nature. We are talking a lot about ego dissolution. So maybe when you talk about ego dissolution, and you can model that on brain structures and activities that are modified in the DMN, for example, does it lead you to think differently, to be more open to other people because you are not so focused on the ego and the me, you know?
I understand. Very, very good comments. Maybe Lukas, do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay. Just what I wanted to add one thing to what Wolfgang was saying. This idea that basically in the 60s, the government was afraid of LSD changing political views. That was why they prohibited it. I would kind of like to offer the counterintuitive opinion here, which is I'd rather think that the people took out LSD and then became politically active and changed to protest against the war. The people that are politically active also happen to the drug culture and take LSD, weed, and whatever. And so that's where this association comes from, that basically because the people who are against the war or were against the war and were politically active also were involved in that scene. And that's basically common in the chat, which really agrees with that. Making it illegal was able to control the people that happen to be using LSD, happen to be being against the war. So that's kind of a different look at how the relationship is managed. But it's obviously just an idea. It's not really like a proven theory. Just an idea I had about the relation between the use and the political activism. And I really like Camile's point, especially about the ecological connection, because I think that's one very specific political thing that you can clearly define, measure, and can clearly look at if that changes. Like I said in the beginning, one of the points was it's not really clear.
Sorry, can you turn off your video again? I think it helped the last time, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry, guys. So yeah, what I was going to say, that this ecological idea that increasing ecological position, or like let's say a more positive view about our nature and our environment, is a very clear political opinion, like being more for protection of the environment and getting involved more in that. And that's something you can easily measure and really look at. While a lot of political opinions, it's not that easy. So I think it would be difficult to say you can just change political view in general. But maybe what you can do, as Camille pointed out, maybe the use of psychedelics might change very specific issues. So for example, ecological connection. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Lukas. There was one other raising his hand. Mohtashim, again, you should be able to speak now, and then I would like to continue because we almost touched another question that is kind of somewhat linked to this. But yeah, Mohtashim, you can go first.
My question is to Andy. In the beginning, you mentioned that the conservatives tend to have larger amygdala, or their neural network is more surrounded by the surrounded around the amygdala. So if any information pass through, it is likely to trigger the amygdala, right? Which it triggers the a defensive mechanism in brain, right? Okay. Are you aware of any study which says that, yeah, okay, these people have been taking drugs, psychedelic drugs, and now it has changed their network, and it is now far away from the amygdala. So then we can say, okay, this is a hard evidence. Now the mean distance from the amygdala and the neural network is increased. So the information passing through the network are less likely to disturb the amygdala. Yeah, so this I would like to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'm happy you asked it. I was already thinking about it when Camille also asked his question, because they have actually done this. There is a fair face recognition task where you are presented with faces of people who look very threatening or who are very intimidating, and naturally, even before you consciously process it, this activates your amygdala, and you show these pictures to people while they're in a scanner. And what they found was that the activation of the amygdala was decreased for people while under the influence of LSD, so that their reaction to fearful stimuli was simply lowered, and their processing, like you suggest, was more done with other brain regions.
Ah, okay, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we can elaborate now on a more specific question. If we assume that maybe there is something in the psychedelic experience that indeed changes your political views, your perspective on environment, maybe your feeling of connectedness, would it then be that the psychedelic experience itself does this change, or maybe what you would do with this experience you've made? So for example, if you made this experience of connectedness, one might come to the conclusion that this is how the world really is, right? So we are all connected. And another one maybe won't draw this conclusion. So is it maybe about integration, or is it about the experience itself? What are your thoughts on this? You can again raise your hand, and then we will make you a participant. Yeah, Alessio. Yes, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Good. Hello, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. Let me just thank you at the very beginning, because it's one of those topics that is difficult to bring in the public sphere and the public debate. So it's really good that you set it up. I wanted to jump in before, but I just take the chance now to just quickly give kind of a skeptic take, and then I'll move to the positive one. So I won't be the downer of the situation. I think that generally speaking, relying on a substance, a chemical compound, to change something that is ecological in nature, as political views might be, and depending on a lot of different variables like historical period or personal upbringing and society at large, is just misleading. So I know that there are researchers' protocols that try to measure variables that might be connected to political views, like, for example, openness and connection to environment, and the ability to empathize with people. But even so, the connection with specific political views is what might be problematic, because those are variables that are compatible with a big variety of political views. I missed the first bit of the meeting, so I don't know if you were referencing the article that came out on Symposia a while ago about, I think it was called "Lucy in the Sky with Nazis" or something like that. So in that article, the article is dense with anecdotes and points. It's the message is pretty clear. It doesn't really doesn't really change much the kind of drugs that you take. You can still be a Nazi if you're in that kind of political environment, political milieu.
Just to interrupt very shortly, this is the article while we are doing this discussion. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I imagine that. Because it surprised me as well. I postponed the reading for a while, and then when I read it, it was like, well, why did it take me so long? So I think the article was, I mean, it's a good source of information for all the kind of connections that there could be between psychedelics use and right-wing environments. And for example, in the article they mention ecofascism. So let's get to one of the points that was already mentioned before. Awareness of the natural environment and our connection with the natural environment is something that is, unfortunately, from the perspective of a left-leaning person like me, compatible with ideologies that are very conservative and very oppressive as well. Ecofascism is being highlighted as a particular strain of fascism that, let's say, just to summarize it quickly, is still puts at the center human beings, but doesn't involve such a big and clear exploitation of natural environment. So it is progressive if compared to what we are seeing now happening in the natural world, like massive exploitation of natural resources, disregard for pollution and such, but it's also fairly conservative in regards to everything else. So people who experience more connection with nature in that respect, through, for example, the consumption of psychedelics, might not necessarily change their political views. That might come if they, for example, have never experienced such a strong connection with nature, which is, again, compatible with several different political views, left-leaning, right-leaning, center-leaning, whatever. So for the positive side, I think that maybe some substances could help within the right context. For example, we know that MDMA was devised originally to help people opening up during psychotherapeutical sessions, and also loosening a little bit in terms of empathy towards others. So loosening in the sense to acquire more empathy towards others. That could be a vehicle for change if it's put in the right context, in the right educational context, in the right social context, and in the political context of reference. And in that respect, it may be, if you analyze this different political views one by one, that you might see that some political views are, for example, very individualistic. So the development of empathy could, interfere with that and make people second guess their choices. But the connection is really feeble, and I'm not entirely sure how right now we can use that knowledge that we have about specific effects of specific substances to contextualize the development of political views.
Yeah, but that's what we want to find out in this discussion, right? So,
Yeah.
But you will be more in favor of Lukas, when I hear correctly, right?
I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alessio. There's probably also.
But please, everybody, please answer. I mean.
Yeah, sure. So maybe the next one can also answer to that. It's Qendrese. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. Qendrese Deda. You should be able to speak now.
Okay, it's Qendrese. It's this Q in my language.
Okay.
It's Cha. I come from Kosovo, but I've been living last 4 years in Slovenia since I'm studying there, and it was interesting this kind of discussion. And I'm thinking for myself, like how much my political views are changed by any big experience that I had in my life. I think that kind of just growing up, I think that not much. For example, I just became more leftist based on what I see and being more aware, and especially living abroad and not being kind of perceived as a migrant just made me emphasize this kind of political point of view last 4 years of my life. And my inner transformation, which was in 2015, that started with one near-death experience, and then with one kind of mystical experience, which was, I'm not sure with what, but in one trance festival that is kind of life-changing in many ways. It just kind of, it just made all these kind of points of view bigger and made these feelings of unity and equality kind of. But I think that I had these points of view, but I think that it's a certain kind of power in all the substances, because it's different if you read something in the book, because all the time I was, for example, looking documentaries or reading, I don't know, about Buddhism from high school, like from 15 years ago, but it's kind of different when you read or when you see a movie or something, and it's different when you embody some kind of experience that you cannot put into words. But again, I think that why I am transformed like this, it's also because of the environment and the points of view that I had before. How to say, I don't think that I changed much, but especially for me, this natural experience that I had with the accident, it was so life-changing. So I had a concussion on my head, so I saw the lights and stuff. I don't know, I thought that I'm maybe dying. And this experience, it's like 5 years ago, and it stays with me like it was yesterday. And then after that, it was much more, I don't know, I had a weird year. And I'm still processing it and integrating, and it's kind of, but but I think that it has the power to change a lot. But again, for me, it was, I think that my political point of view, it is based on also in all experiences that I had until then. For example, as a child, I experienced war, which is again a kind of thing that it stays with me. And I don't know, and it's why I am like this. It's also because of all that brings me there. But again, it's a
So
lot
you
of
would
power.
say, sorry to interrupt. So you would say that it's more some kind of amplifier, and the experience you had before
I would
were
say,
amplified.
amplifier. But again, and also kind of, I cannot. I would try to work on it, to put it more into my work and into like what it's all this about. But it is a lot of power, especially to, I think, to transform people internally, and also in the way that our mind works, and in the way that their psychological well-being. Like, for example, I was depressed in high school, and then after that it was too bad. I was having like flashbacks and everything, but again, I was more grateful that I'm alive, and I was loving life more than before. I don't know how to say. It is just too good and too bad at the same time, and it just makes you see things differently. And then it just adds, maybe it's because even like when you are in a life-threatening situation, you just value life more. Or when you experience something that is too extreme, then you just, this kind of values are kind of, you are scared that you will lose something, and then, but
maybe it's the disruptiveness. Maybe it's the disruptiveness of the experience itself.
And I think that it's, how to say, it is maybe a power. It is this thing of for a big political change. I was thinking for the 60s and this kind of the stopping of the wars. I think ideally it would be really nice if all the people would have these kind of feelings, and these kind of divisions would stop. Like, I don't know, but even I cannot think that even this coronavirus situation, that it will be kind of massive. I think that it's quite utopic to think that these things will do a massive waking up of the people, because we see like
so this maybe brings us a little bit too much. Sorry to interrupt you there, but
I don't want to. But
we will go back to this question maybe later on.
I wanted to.
I think there are also other participants maybe want to say something. The first one was Mark, I think. Yeah, Mark, you should be able to speak right now. Hello. Yeah, maybe you have to.
Now, I think.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, hi, thanks. I can add a little bit to what the woman before me just said about the psychedelics being an amplifier, because when I would try to break it down to some very important factor, I guess it's probably the context in which the psychedelic experience is taking place, and the context of including like everything, your current mindset, where you are right now in the moment, the place you are. And for me, it would just be also really interesting to know whether, for example, being in when placing people into nature and they have their psychedelic experience there, if they are, for example, more connected to nature, while placing them together with other humans makes them more connected to humans, or and basically what comes down there, or to break it down, is that I think the context is just really important. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
If I can add something to that, it's interesting in Qendrese's, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly, story, and your story as well, I still feel this conflict between psychedelics being a potentiator of the experiences you are having during that time, while also in regards to, for instance, the near-death experience, that these peak experiences, which you also see in the studies, that the intensity of the mystical experience also is correlated with the measure of personality change. So there seems to be this threshold aspect where they inherently have this contextualized property. However, there is also in some events the opportunity to have this very perspective shifting attribute to them. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And thanks, Mark, again. Yeah. So there was one other participant raising his hand. Nathan, yeah, it's your turn now. Yeah, you should be able to speak. Maybe you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute myself. Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Nathan, I'm in the United States. And I really like this question. Can psychedelics change your political view? And the thing that I've been thinking about since I joined, I missed the first 10 minutes or so, but this is all within the context of the political view being a property of the individual. I think this question, that kind of is what it sounds like to me. But I think that culture and political view as kind of a subset of culture is an emergent phenomenon. There are political views that float around that aren't really linked to any single individual, but a group of people that develops these political views as an emergent property. And there's a lot of research in this article and what you guys are talking about on what can happen to a person's physiology in the brain, their personality, on a psychedelic experience. And I think that's all very telling that yes, it does cause change in people as kind of a higher level conclusion. But groups of people on psychedelics can create emergent properties, right? If we think about, we live in a world that's inherently interconnected, right? We're all having this Zoom call. So the groups that we belong to are not necessarily spatially co-located around us. We're connected to people all over the world. We are interconnected, as is the neurons in our brain. So if we see changes inside of an individual's brain and their personality and everything that follows, how can we kind of develop a study that looks at large-scale emergent properties of people taking psychedelics? And I think if that can be done, that might give rise to some pretty powerful conclusions, or at least some pretty powerful observations to give us kind of a test bed for getting more data about this. What are your guys' thoughts?
Thank you,
Yes.
Nathan. Lukas,
Yeah.
do you want to go first?
I'm gonna stop my video again so you can kind of hear me. So I hope I understood you correctly, Nathan, but just to reiterate, I think you said that basically if a lot of people take psychedelics, that basically the group of psychedelic users will have a political opinion emerge for this group. So it's not a personal political view, but a political view that is emergent out of this group of psychedelic users. Right? Just correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist.
Yeah. So I would kind of, the idea of the article presented at the beginning would kind of be kind of counter to that idea. So would basically I would say that the use of the psychedelic, or so the group of psychedelic users might have an emergent political view, but I would say it's way less strong and way less unidirectional than the group of people doing the same engaging in the same political activity, right? So it's less about the group of people that all have taken the substance and more about the group of people that are all doing the same thing, voting in a specific way, being active in a reform of a specific way, so that this group would have a stronger emergent political view than a group just having taken the same substance, right? And the examples from the article were kind of that in this group of psychedelic users, you would have people of extremely opposing views. So the emergent view might be just more muddled or in the middle. But if you want a political change, you need like stronger political activity. And so I would argue that the political activity, so the group of political activists, is more important than the group of using psychedelics. I hope I got my point across. It's kind of trying to figure
so.
out. Thank you.
So you're saying, so you said the group of political activists as opposed to a general group. Is that this distinction that you're making?
Yeah, kind of. So it's more important that people are active politically and have an emergent political view out of that than having a group of people just using a substance and having a view emerging out of that.
I see. Because I guess we can already see that without psychedelics, you can have a very politically active group give rise to political opinions changing. Like you can imagine the very charismatic leaders throughout history giving these great speeches and influencing people. So when you, I guess, introduce a substance that can change someone at kind of a more fundamental level, if that someone is already one of these charismatic people that can influence people, that could be kind of a strong impetus for change.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
A comment, Eddie?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You're
making me think about the good old Good Friday experiment. Maybe very quickly, if people are not aware, they gave half of the participants in a study psilocybin, and this was done in a church setting, in a religious setting. And this had quite a high incidence of mystical experiences, and if I'm not mistaken, also a few converts. And you maybe think of this with your charismatic leader perspective. And well, I wouldn't normally say this, but since we're having a discussion about psychedelic Nazis, imagine putting Hitler in front of a crowd and giving them all psychedelics. How much more would they be receptive to his views? It's a scary, I don't feel comfortable asking this question, but it's, yeah.
No, it's a fair point. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a scary thing to think about. Especially like in a place like the United States right now. I can imagine how something similar could go over.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nathan, again.
Yeah,
maybe
thanks.
sorry, maybe you want to say something, Bas. You should be able to speak right now.
Hi, yeah.
Hey.
I had to unmute myself. I wanted to give an idea how a change might happen in the other direction that would be obvious. Like psychedelics can put you more in contact with your animal nature, I have a feeling. So kind of the animal part of your brain and connection with nature maybe, but nature is amoral. I mean, morality is a human construct. So if animals just want to preserve their own genes and they feel close to other animals who have their own genes, and there's more like a competition. So I think if you would go this direction in a trip, you can end up with like more social Darwinist views or something like survival of the fittest in terms of people. So I think it's really how you, like you said before, how you integrate it. You see, you can have a mystical experience, but the context in which you integrate is of course very important. And this yeah, I mean, Nazis were there. Some people say they also had a kind of mysticism. So yeah, that was my
yeah, a very good comment, and I think it brings us back to the point that one, suggestibility is a very important point when it comes to taking psychedelics, right? So maybe the suggestibility increases the openness for the social context around you. And then the other thing is, of course, the integration and how you, what you do with the psychedelic experience. So I think this is somewhat clear, and maybe you have a sort of consensus in this. I saw that Mark also wanted to say something about this. Mark, you should be able to speak right now.
Yes, you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still forming something in my mind. So, I mean, I think political views are very complex things, and I think some of it has to do. So one is kind of the context, the social political context that a person has, social, economical, and so on. But there's also a component that is based on immediate perception and how a person reacts to unfamiliar stimulus and so on and so on, which psychedelics could affect. But just maybe to provoke and raise the question of what at all a political view is. So each person has a certain worldview, which is more or less informed. I mean, I can have an opinion about, I know, some war in Asia, which I know nothing about, and another person can have an opinion and know a lot about it. And we all have different opinions. But when we kind of step up to the public realm, to we have to reach a consensus, which means to kind of combine our differing views. So if you have a demonstration with like thousands of people, like against climate atrocities, obviously each individual has a slightly different point of view, but still they somehow guide together to express a shared opinion. Now, the reason I mention it is because I think it's, what I want to kind of stress by it is that there's a lot of inapparent political view that goes beyond the the perceptions of a person, their opinion, and more to their place in society and how they behave. One thing I was reminded during the kind of the talks of different people is hearing a story about, so there's some abortion clinic, or a clinic where abortions were conducted in the US, and there was a group of demonstrators that would demonstrate every week against the abortion, so like the so-called pro-lifers. And one member of those demonstrators got pregnant unintentionally. She used the services of this clinic to get an abortion. She was absent for a month, but then a month afterwards, she again participated in the demonstration. And I think, I don't know, it's we can have different opinions about this, but I mean, you can view the behavior of many people as maybe, I mean, there's always kind of a shared, there's always some extent to which people exhibit a herd mentality. Like sometimes you don't really, you want to relax, you don't want to think too much, so you just accept the opinions of the group you're in. Sometimes you're a bit more thoughtful and you're like, raise questions, but raising questions is kind of effortful. You come in conflict with other people. So I think it's all kind of complicated. I'm shaking my hands to express how. Yeah. So I mean, I think at the end there's a certain component, there's a certain level in which things like direct perception affect how you develop your political views and behaviors and so on, but it's embedded in this like shells and shells of greater contexts. So yeah, that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Andy, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you for that great anecdote. And I think it's very, very revealing, actually, especially speaking in the context of psychedelics, where Camille also mentioned, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was in, the concept of ego dissolution. And if I hear the story of this woman, I can imagine that she very much identifies with that group that shares this political perspective, which has been a part of her identity, where psychedelics, of course, have the opportunity to go into this ego dissolution state, whereby you de-identify with these mental constructs. And I was just thinking that that might be a possible mechanism to facilitate certain perspective shifts, where you no longer are identified with this group for your own ego reasons, so to speak.
Yeah, I just, oh, I'm still okay. One thing that the Serbian, I forgot her name. I remember it started with a Q. Something she made me also think, something that also kind of stressed for me how those things, how kind of your political stance goes beyond your kind of immediate perception, is what she mentioned about being an immigrant. And I was thinking about how like a person can be, I don't know, like a right wing in the United States and then go move to another country and like, I don't know, to the other side of the world and keep on reading American views and having sort of not taking drugs, so having the same kind of general mindset and following American news the same way that she or he had while living in the States, but just by their body sort of being in a different place and not quite embedded in the same way in the American society, have their in some way maybe political views change. I'm not so well articulated because it just came up to me, this idea now, but like I feel like you can even all of your perception is the same in some way. So you kind of immediate perceptions and like the perception of the news and what's happening in the States. But just because, I don't know, the people around you are not the, I don't know, the Americans that were around you when you lived there, but those other people wherever you live now as an immigrant, or just by thinking about yourself as an immigrant, it kind of speaks to, I don't know, both pro and against the idea of psychedelics changing your, I don't know, like even just like being somewhere else.
Maybe that's a good connection now, Mark, because we just came to one final question here, kind of. So if we are pretty sure that maybe psychedelics, maybe they change your political views, or maybe they don't. But if we assume that they do, what do you think? What role should they play in society? Like, should they be illegal? Should they be not illegal? Because it's a very powerful tool if they change political opinions. And maybe that's also a consensus that we found. We are not sure exactly how they change political opinions. Given that, do you think that they should be legal or they should be illegal? We very much look forward to your thoughts on this. Maybe also Andy or Lukas, you can give a short start from your standpoint, and then the others can make comments.
Yeah, okay, I can just start if you like. Yeah, okay, so I think the idea behind this question we had was that if we assume that these substances are a tool to specifically change political opinions, right? So if this were true, that a substance could make everyone more liberal or everyone change their political opinions and stuff, how should those substances then be used? Because you could imagine, as was done in the 60s and 70s, a government trying to use psychedelics to change someone's opinion would be a very unfortunate situation. So that's something I personally would want to avoid if we assume that these substances change someone's opinion, that someone uses these to forcefully change someone's opinion, right? That would be a possibility if you say the substance does that. As I kind of personally assume that they don't really do that in this way, so that it's more the political actions you take when you are not using the substance, or what's mentioned, I think Core mentioned at the beginning, that's the situation you are in after you have the experience, that is more important. Then I think this shouldn't play a role in the question of legal status, because it's not really what's happening. It's more important to take political action, and political action shouldn't be illegalized, obviously. I think we should all be able to take political action and be active politically.
I hope so, yeah.
But if these substances were able to specifically change someone's political opinion in a specific way, I would be very scared, to be honest, because then you would have a control method of just changing someone's opinion on purpose. It's kind of my 2 cents, I would say.
Which of course raises another question: if they change the political opinion and they are illegal, this is of course also a control mechanism here. But maybe Andy, you can start, and then I'm curious about the others. So what do you think? What role should they play in society if they change? Maybe even change like you argued for in the beginning.
Yeah. If it were proven that it is a unidirectional change that takes place because of these substances, you could, of course, put even more questions whether it's fair or if this is desired, because we don't know if a more conservative government or a more liberal government or maybe a mix of the two is something that we want. And if you would make these substances legal and hypothetically everybody would have free access to it, suddenly we end up with bluntly put a bunch of hippies. This is something that is to be desired. However, at the same time, this is something that you would then block by law. Being a hippie, no, I find it a very difficult question. If there would be another substance, let's say you take away all the connectedness inducing properties of psychedelics, and there is a hypothetical, as a thought experiment, a substance that you take it, nothing happens, but you are more conservative. Suddenly I would have problems with this, personally speaking. So is it then fair to say that if it's only because I'm probably more liberal, but from the eyes of a conservative person, this is just as problematic, what we have now? Yeah, it's
exactly. Yeah.
It's a difficult question.
Maybe Bas, you want to also give us your thoughts on this? Yeah, you should be able to speak right now.
Yeah, very good question indeed. Maybe they should just put it on the disclaimer, like side effects, like warning, this may turn you into a hippie, and then it's okay. but yeah, if you look at the context argument and the integration, then it might also contribute to like polarization and more bubble forming. Like if people use psychedelics in their own community, in their own direct environment, it just only helps to like strengthen their views and makes people, like groups, more isolated from each other. But I don't know how you, if there should be a political, if it can be a reason to prohibit it. So I think it will in a discussion, this safety side would be like have a much higher priority, but yeah, it's interesting to think about more.
Yeah, thank you. And another question that I just had in mind, maybe that's also connecting to this one, because of course it's maybe also a moral question if we can even say that psychedelics change your political views, right? Because then we would make the claim that there's no free will of the individual to integrate the experience as they wish, and kind of it would be determined that you take a substance and your actual own opinions change without you having something to it, right? So that's also a big claim against self-responsibility, in my opinion. Yeah, what do you think about this? See that there, maybe also someone who has not said something before. We have some minutes left.
If I maybe, because I see people dropping out before we do the last part, I would love to mention that mine is also hosting other webinars. For example, coming Thursday, we are having Heather Hargraves speaking, who is a psychotherapist and has done a lot of research with neurobiofeedback and regulating your own brain activity by hooking yourself up to the computer and having your mental activity displayed back to you. We're having more events, so please check out our Facebook site, check out our website, where we have all these events. Sorry, just before people start leaving, I want to drop it in there, and then we can continue.
Exactly, yeah. And I just see the events there. Awesome, yeah, so any final thoughts on you, the participants, on this? Yeah, Mark, okay, Mark should be able to speak again. Yeah, maybe try to limit yourself that we can also pick other participants, yeah?
Yeah, I'll try to, usually I'm not so good at it, but I'll try to, do it. Yes, I want to join in you and what you just said, Patrick. Actually, I remember the first time I ever took psychedelics. It so happened coincidentally that I was supposed to buy plane tickets for me and some friends of mine. And I was given cash, so quite a lot of cash to do the purchase. And I was afraid that, I'm gonna take it and I'll become a hippie and think that, oh, money, like capitalism, and that I'm gonna burn all the cash that I just received, or something like that. And I try to hide the money for myself, which is obviously ridiculous thing. But I think that at the end, what I always felt is that with psychedelics, in some sense, I'm more myself. Like it somehow makes me being more of myself. It doesn't shift who I am. And regarding what Andy said, the thought experiment, I mean, I think there's, the way I see it, there is a sort of kind of fallacy there that also binds to the very beginning and the idea of the association between political views and the big five. I mean, I don't think there is a certain pattern, like sort of neurobiological pattern in the brain that one can associate with being conservative or not. I don't know if any of you and the other participant listened to there's also a podcast episode in, what are they called? Symposia. They also had a podcast episode where the staff discussed the piece, and one of them mentioned a quote of someone who said that given a liberal, a progressive person who don't change their opinions for 20 years, they become conservative. And so I think there's not even trying to be like too smart about it, but I don't, I mean, I remember that, again, going back to my first anecdotes. So from the outside, you think, oh, you take LSD, you become a hippie, you like fuck capitalism, fuck institutions. But I think that's not really how it works. And the same way that, so I don't think, so, and then regarding what Patrick said about the free will and so on, I'm kind of would back that up. And like, I don't see the drug as like putting you in a certain direction. It would be kind of, I mean, I would say it would be kind of dangerous, quote unquote, if there was a drug that would like make you conservative, make you liberal. But I think that politics goes way beyond kind of perception. So it's hard for me to imagine such a drug. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Any comments on this, Andy or Lucas? Yeah.
Well, like the only thing I totally agree that it won't be like, oh, if you have this brain region, you will be more, or this if this brain region is enlarged, you will be more conservative. Personally, I would interpret it as a pattern of activation kind of represents your interpretive style for your consciousness. Are you quickly seeing threats? Are you very risk-taking? And I would personally frame it as, do certain personality types have a stronger tendency towards a certain political orientation? Because I completely agree, it's definitely not so one-on-one. Oh yeah, this region is enlarged, you must be liberal. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is also maybe a link to one of our next online discussions, right? So we thought about having another discussion about how maybe psychedelic experiences. So now we discussed if they maybe change your political views, but of course it can also make you more likely to interpret or perceive the world or different aspects of the world. So for example, we know that pattern recognition is increased in psychedelic experiences, and that there's more not only connectedness to nature, but also you see more connections between your thoughts and between your beliefs. And this might be a nice question for one of our next online discussions. Before we close, if there's nothing more to say, I think it would be nice if you all participate in the poll once more. And we thought it would be nice to have a poll asking you whether you change your opinion after this discussion or not. So are you maybe more confident that, yeah, psychedelics change your political views, or are you less confident, or maybe nothing changed? Yeah, you go out and you have the same opinion. I'm quite curious about how things develop for you.
Mm.
Yeah, cool. People participating. And there's indeed some changes. Yeah, interesting. So 4 more people have to vote. Okay, I'll give you 10 more seconds.
In the meantime, maybe I should mention, and I want to reiterate, we're a young organization, and if you enjoy these kinds of discussions, we also have a forum where a lot of activity is taking place, where these kinds of discussions are very much promoted and people can engage with each other, which is for our members. So please, if you want to support psychedelic science, want to give this a push to get this into the mainstream as much as we can, consider a membership, which is not too expensive, and you can get discounts on these kind of events. You can participate in other discussions. It's a lovely large family, which is, I think, a great undertaking to support. Which, of course, I would say, but yeah.
Yeah. Only your opinion, right? Yeah. Yeah, but indeed. So this is the final result. So yeah, for more of half of the people, they feel either less confident or more confident. So it is some changes, and we really enjoyed the discussion with all of you. So thank you for showing up tonight, and we will surely let you know when there's new online discussions and new events. As Andy said, check out our Mind Academy website, and you will be up to date. So thank you again. Thank you, Andy and Lukas, for making up the room and presenting this 2 opposing standpoints. And thank you all once more for the discussion, and have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thank you guys for taking part, and also we were a bit unsure if guys would participate, but so really nice to see a lot of you being part of this discussion. Yeah, just as a final note from my side, be politically active, don't just take psychedelics. Take the activity into your daily life, like I mentioned at the beginning. I think that's the important issue here. And have a great evening. Hope to see you again. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.